Reptilian beings have permeated cultures across the globe. But are these stories mere myth? Or could they be harbingers of a hidden truth about our planet? Jordan Maxwell, a man who has spent a lifetime at the crossroads of myth and reality, he shares from ancient civilizations to the modern corridors of power. These reptilian figures recur with chilling consistency. What if the gods and demons of old were not spiritual beings, but visitors from another world? Beings with agendas that are far from benevolent. Maxwell's research suggests a conspiracy of cosmic proportions, where governments and elites are mere puppets under the control of these extraterrestrial overlords. As we peel back the layers of deception, the question arises, what is their end game?
Aliens, are they real? You ask a 6-year-old Christian child, do you believe in God? Well, everyone believes in God. All Christians believe in God. Well, God is simply the word dog, spelled backwards. So what you need to do when you're talking about aliens or spirits or UFOs or anything is to describe your terms. When you say God, what do you mean by God? When you say aliens, what in your mind are you thinking when you say the word alien? Because what I have in my mind might be different. So we're talking about apples and oranges maybe. So you need to define your terms. When we talk about aliens, as I said, you can ask a 6-year-old Christian child, where is God? Is God from here? Is he from Alabama or from New York? Or where does he live? Well, a child will lead them. A child will say, God's up there. He's out there. Well, yeah, but if he's out there, and California is one area of the sky, but if he's in China and he says he's out there, that means he's out there in space. So out there simply means not from this world. God is preternatural, not of this world. So therefore, if he's out there, that means he's extraterrestrial. He's not from here, because if he was born in Alabama or born in Mississippi, then he would be terrestrial. He's from here. He's not from here. He created here, but he's not from here. And so you need to understand that when you say extraterrestrials, it's the same idea that is talked about in the scriptures about demons and angels and devils. Do you believe in God? Yes. Where is he? He's out there. Oh, he's extraterrestrial? Yes. Do you believe in angels? Yes. Yeah. And where do angels reside? Where are they? Oh, they're out there with God. Oh, they're extraterrestrial too? They're not from here? No. So, well, we see angels are out there. Well, are they intelligent? Oh, yeah, they're a lot smarter than we are. Well, of course they are. That's why they're not here. People used to say to me all the time, and I still get it, people will say, if there are extraterrestrials, why don't they come down here and show themselves and talk to us and communicate with us? To which I always say, look, I'm human like you are. And I'm ashamed to be seen with you and accompany you. So I don't want to talk to you. But that's why the spirit entities who come down, let's go back to square one to understand God and the angels and the extraterrestrials. Go back and look at it for what it says. First of all, in Genesis 1:1 is mistranslated. Why? Because the King James translators were very good with the King's English, but they didn't know pot about Hebrew or Sumerian, Babylonian scripture. We call them aliens, demons, devils, angels, sons of God, and Anunnaki, and go down the line. All the ancient cultures, everybody knew about it, except Americans. We don't know for nothing. It has to hit us in the face before we will admit it. But just keep in mind, the reason why government and churches do not admit the obvious is because the whole system that controls us on the earth is government and religion holding hands. It's the two hands that control the human race on the earth: government, religion. And so neither one of those hands want you butting in and telling people what's really going on, because now it's bad for business.
Yep.
So they got to get rid of you because you're waking people up.
Yep.
I'm totally convinced myself that reptilian aliens live with us. I've never seen one, thank God. I've seen enough crap in my life to know that there's a lot of strange stuff going on in this world we're not aware of, so it doesn't surprise me. But happily, I've never seen one. But I'm totally convinced that reptilians do exist because I have heard too many people who are very highly intelligent, professional people that do not know each other, tell me about their experiences that they've had one-on-one with reptile aliens. And all of them are very credible people, that if they went into a court and testified against you, you'd have a hell of a problem trying to make them a liar, because they're eyewitnesses to this. And so they've told me as eyewitnesses what has happened to them about their run-ins with reptile aliens. Airline people, bankers, real estate executives, doctors. I just feel there's too much smoke not to be a fire. And then when you add to that all of the thousands of years of history of all the different cultures that talk about reptile aliens, put that with it, and I'm of the opinion that I wouldn't be a bit surprised if there is something to it. Because I do know that so much of what's really going on this earth, we are not privy to see. We're not privileged to see a lot of stuff that's happening. I would say a classic example of what I'm talking about. Have any of you ever heard of Skinwalker Ranch? Skinwalker Ranch is in northern Utah. It's an area in northern Utah that is just an extraordinary story of what's happening there, and it has been happening for hundreds of years. But now that certain scientific people have gotten involved, it's become extraordinary. The kind of things they're recording and bringing out now and bringing to the public, that's been happening there for hundreds of years. But Skinwalker Ranch is owned by some people who finally sold it because they couldn't take anymore. And they're seeing on that ranch, daytime and night, all kinds of things happening. It's kind of like a vortex for the occult world. Let's say reptile aliens, dinosaurs, dogs would have their backs at 6 foot high, dogs, aliens, UFOs coming out of the ground, and all of this is being scientifically photographed and filmed. There's an incredible amount of off-the-wall strange stuff going on that ranch continually. Obviously, there is another world that's operating with us simultaneously. And so all the things that the ancient people have talked about, these aliens and demons and half animal, half humans, all these different things that the ancient cultures have talked about. And the Sumerians drew pictures of these hideous creatures, a half human and half animal. I've always thought, now, maybe those things did really exist. And so I'm of the opinion that this stuff does really exist, because I've had way too many experiences of my own that showed me that there is a world going on right now simultaneously with us that we're not privy to know about. Once in a while, it will happen to you, and you will see something that you've never experienced before in your life. And the more I talk to people around town, you'd be surprised how many ordinary people tell me extraordinary things that they've seen in their life. And they don't know how to explain it, but it just adds one more nail to the coffin, one more thing that I've never heard of that's here. I was just talking to my good friend who owns some nightclubs in Los Angeles, and I was down to his club, and we were talking about what I'm doing, and he said one night, a couple of the city councilmen from Los Angeles City Council came over, and they had some police there, and they were just having some drinks after hours at this club in downtown, and he said we were sitting out the patio, And he said, we're all sitting out there, all these politicians and police chief and everybody, and enjoying the evening. And he says that while we're talking, over our head came some kind of an luminous greenish looking ball with a long tail. And he said it just swam over us and swam around. We watched it, and it swam on through the air and swam on and went on out into the city and was gone. And he said everybody saw that and thought, what the hell was that? You know? And nobody knew. That's just one example of the kind of thing that I'm talking about. There's all kinds of strange things going on right now in front of us that we don't see. And every now and then you'll see something. So, are there reptilian aliens among us? I would say yes. Obviously in movies, television shows, they're always showing these reptile alien creatures in motion pictures. Again, I am totally convinced for myself that Hollywood makes movies based on real things. Steven Spielberg, in one of his interviews a couple of years ago, he said that I don't make movies to entertain, I make movies to comment on important subjects. I don't make movies to entertain. Well, he's made all kinds of movies about reptile aliens and Jurassic Park and ETs and extraterrestrials and all kinds of stuff like that he's famous for. And if he's not making those kind of movies to entertain, he's making them to comment on important subjects. So even the likes of Steven Spielberg feel this is important. Incidentally, if you can imagine how much money it costs to finance Steven Spielberg to make a 90-minute movie, if you can just imagine, if you contract with him to be the executive producer to pay for a movie that he produces, can you imagine how much money it's going to cost you? Because he doesn't go cheap. Well, he made a 19 hours television series. 19 hours. Somebody financed him to the tune of 19 hours for Steven Spielberg to make a television series called Taken, in which that was one of his most important subjects in his life, is this concept of aliens taking people. Not just reptile aliens, but the whole concept of other world entities coming and kidnapping humans. So it was called Taken. Well, the movie Taken was actually comes from a book by Dr. Carla Turner, a lady doctor, who was probably the best UFO researcher in the world. As far as I'm concerned, she was top of everybody, all the best UFO researchers. But Dr. Carla Turner was, in my opinion, she was a doctor, some kind of a doctor before, but she got into the alien abduction subject, and her work was just phenomenal. She did some serious work on this whole subject of alien abduction. And she began to get into the connections between the U.S. government and alien presence, and how the U.S. government is working directly with the aliens. Soon after that, she was found dead, and her husband died later. Immediately after that came out, after she started talking publicly about the fact that the U.S. government is dealing directly with aliens and allowing these aliens to kidnap children, to kidnap people, kidnap humans, and are using them for experiments, she was found dead.
What year was that?
I'm not sure, too many years ago. And I still have her lectures. As a matter of fact, her lectures are on the web right now. Just go to Google video and type in Dr. Carla, K-A-R-L-A, Carla Turner. And listen to her and tell me if it doesn't run chills up and down your spine listening to this lady. She's very, very knowledgeable. She knew what she was talking about. And she's talking about the fact that when you hear people talking about these aliens, some of them being kind and good to us, etc., she said, you better go back and do your homework. This whole entire scenario of alien presence are entities from somewhere else who have come here into your planet, into your life. And we don't know what their objective is or what their objects are. So it's foolish to think that any of them are dear and good and benefactors. We don't know who they are or where they've come from. Undoubtedly, people in government know, but they're not talking. Well, she found out a lot, and that's why she's dead. But as I said, Hollywood is telling us a lot of things about the world, and they put it into movies. And the reptile alien has been around for a long time in TV shows, and even more so, this was in Time Machine. So reptile aliens, and then of course, as you know, in both V, the first movie V, and the second one, these were reptile aliens who presented themselves as beautiful people, highly intelligent, very highly advanced, and the humans were taken in by them, humans wanting to be on the side of the winners. So, and if you remember, I talked about the dawn of a new day in one of my videos, and in V, the second one, they talk about exactly what I was saying they were going to say. They said in V that there was a dawn of a new day in which the whole world was coming under a new world order. And I've said for years that the symbol for the new world order was the dawn of a new day, and the video came out and talked about that months before this came out. So there is something to the idea that Hollywood and government, military, are totally aware that there is an alien connection going on right now in point of fact, and Hollywood is putting it out into movies. Military is doing it undercover, and government is acting like there's nothing to it at all. But I think that there's something very, very frightening going on. I think we are being invaded. The whole concept that the reptile aliens look like humans. Well, that's not new. I mean, that's even in the Bible. The Bible says God made man in his own image and likeness. And I've talked to so many rabbis about this subject. First of all, the word God in the Bible, in Genesis 1:1, when it says, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, the word God is Elohim. It's a feminine plural. It's not one God. It's gods, more than one. And then when you get into what kind of gods, well, they were supposedly, according to Hebrew, they had scales. They were scaly gods, the Elohim, who created us. So, and we could talk about that too. I've got a lot of stuff on that. But the whole idea is that these reptile aliens are in motion pictures. They're in sci-fi magazines. Of course, they're everywhere. And almost all of them have a ridge on their skulls, a raised flange or a ridge on their heads. I thought that was interesting a long time ago, and I picked up on that and started doing some research on that. That this ridge or this raised part on the head of the skull. Of course, we have the history of reptile aliens, and probably one of the most interesting books. And there's so many books on the history of reptile aliens on the earth. But this one's called Flying Saucers and Dragons, the story of mankind's reptilian past. And this is published by Book Tree Publishing, our dear friends here who publish our books for us. In San Diego. It's called Flying Serpents and Dragons. Excellent book on tracing the ancient history, medieval history, and modern day history of aliens interacting with humans, reptile aliens interacting with humans. I mean, all of our stories coming out of the Bible showing reptile aliens. So, we got a hell of a long past of humans' intervention with aliens. Here in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve, you'll see the serpent is upright, standing upright, conversing with Eve. Alien interaction and interplay between aliens and humans. One Hebrew Jewish source on the Bible says, were Adam and Eve human? We're all familiar with the Old Testament account of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden and how they ate the forbidden fruit. But what is not widely known is that there were other ancient religious documents that describe this event and tell us of a different and startling story. And the Jewish writings, the Haggadah, the wellspring of Jewish oral tradition, says the first result was that Adam and Eve became naked before their bodies had been overlaid with a horny skin and enveloped in a cloud of glory. And then it goes on to say, no sooner had they violated the command given them, then the cloud of glory, then their horny skin dropped from them. And it talks about the second quote was from another source. This is the Christian Gnostic text. Talks about how now Eve believed the words of the serpent. She looked at the tree, and she took some time. She took some of its fruit and ate, and she gave her husband also, and he ate too. Then their mind opened, and they ate, and the light of knowledge shone for them. They knew that they were naked in regard to knowledge. And when they saw their makers, they loathed them. Since they were beastly forms, they understood very much. So even in the old Gnostic Christian text talking about the makers or the creators of mankind were beastly in form. And if that's the case, then we were made the image and likeness of our Creator. And so when we were made, the Jewish writings say we had horny skins. And so the ancient world always showed kings and rulers and princes connected to serpents, serpent queens. Some of the scientific books are theorizing that the dinosaurs somehow or another were able to evolve into other kind of creatures over millions of years. And of course there's Nicholas de Berry. He was a Grand Master of the Dragon's Legacy, or the Dragon's Court in Europe. Sir, what was his name? What was the name of that British writer that died, that did all the work on the bloodlines? Do you remember? Who was that? A thin writer, I can't remember his name right now. Sir Lawrence Gardner. Lawrence Gardner. So Lawrence Gardner wrote quite a few books, large books about the bloodlines of the Holy Grail, about Jesus' bloodlines, etc. A very famous author, and I knew him well. We did some lectures together. Well, I found out later that Nicholas de Berry was a co-author in Europe with Sir Lawrence Gardner. But Lawrence Gardner didn't tell Americans that most of the knowledge that Lawrence Gardner was bringing out in his books that we were reading here about the bloodlines of the royalty of Europe and the royalty of the bloodlines of Jesus and all that kind of thing. He was getting a lot of his information from Nicholas de Berry, who was a Grand Master in the Dragon's Court in Europe, a secret society, a very powerful ancient old order where they worshiped the dragon, the reptile alien gods. And this is a very legitimate society. And this is what was his name? And they called him Vlad the Impaler. Who was this? What was the term they gave him? Dracula. Dracula was actually a real man. He was a prince, and he was very bloodthirsty. And but he belonged to, and at the time, Dracula was the head of the Dragon's Court. Today, Nicholas de Berry is the head of the Dragon's Court. And so Nicholas talks about, his book is called The Dragon's Legacy, The Secret History of the Ancient Bloodlines. And on the bottom it says he's a Grand Master, Imperial Royal Dragon's Court. And so, as I said, he writes a lot about the concept of the reptile aliens who have ruled Europe behind the scenes. Wouldn't surprise me. Of course, in statues all over the world, statues of aliens, reptile aliens. I saw this one in England when I was in England speaking on tour. I went to a UFO exhibit. This guy had an incredible museum of all kinds of reptile aliens, and on the back wall he would have the quotes from the reference books, from the Bible and reference books, describing, what you were seeing. So it wasn't like he was making these up, he was just showing you where this information came from, and then design creatures that looked like what was on the document. And you see the connection between the ancient reptile dinosaurs and what the human evolved could possibly look like. And as I said, there are statues all over Europe implying that humans are being dominated by reptile aliens. Quetzalcoatl, also pictured as a reptile in Mexico. This is in, I think it's in Finland. One of the Nordic countries, where it shows a man being molested by a reptile alien.
Is that Gustav Bergland in Oslo?
Yeah, it could be. That's right. It was in Oslo. And now the woman.
Yeah.
Incredible. The eyes of reptile aliens, reptiles, first of all, reptile eyes. The large eye aliens that we are told, and the ancient people made statues of these alien creatures they said they saw. Here's one from Kosovo, going back to the Neolithic period. You see, it looks like an alien with the skin, the eyes. Why would these ancient people make representation of these creatures that they saw, and they look like reptiles? Because they very well might have been reptiles. This is from Sumeria, the old Babylonian, Akkadian, Sumeria area of the world, Middle East. Quite literally, a reptile head, reptile eyes. Lord of the Rings makes the reptile eyes. That's pretty extraordinary stuff when you think about the possibility that maybe there had been for thousands of years before humans were on the earth, this may have been inhabited by a reptilian race. The human brain, between the two lobes of the human brain, down the middle, there's something called the reptilian brain. I've talked to doctors about this, and they say, yeah, that's the correct term that's used. There's a part of the human brain between the two lobes in the middle called the reptilian brain. And they say that when a human is developing in the womb, that it develops like a reptile. It has a tail, it has all the accoutrements of a reptile, lizard, or whatever, and then it begins to fill out and become more human. But when it's actually in the formative stages, it looks like a reptile. And then, of course, we have a reptile complex in the brain. It's called the reptilian complex in the brain. So, you've got to wonder, why would science and medical science call this area in the brain the reptilian? Also in comic magazines, obviously, all kinds of comics over the years have always shown reptiles actually at war, wearing uniforms. So they're not just animals, they are actually intelligent creatures. Aztecs and Mayas. Now the strange crescent heads that I talked about, these strange crest heads, is what caught my attention many, many years ago. As a matter of fact, I did a video on this quite a long time ago, but I think it's so important I'm redoing it. The same idea of this crested heads, this crest on the heads of reptiles and birds also. Birds are connected to the reptile world. So when you see those reptiles with these crested heads, I picked up on this, as I said, many years ago, thinking about this, saying, wait a minute. Crested heads. Here's a skull. You see the crest is a natural part of the skull. natural part of the skull. This is not that important because we see it in all the reptiles until you start applying it to humans. Now, once we've established this is a reptilian a trait in reptiles, here is called a helmeted lizard. But you'll see the reptile connection between the reptile alien and the lizard with the crested head. Then, as we saw just before, from Sumeria, you see these reptile gods, men and women, crested heads. The heads of these figurines were styled by some, they look reptilian, lizard-headed. And I'm just of the opinion that people back in the ancient world, were not dreaming this up for Hollywood. They were just making statues of things they've actually seen. So I would be, as I said, wouldn't be a bit surprised if there are and has been on this earth intelligent reptilian creatures on this earth. That's what our ancient ancestors were trying to tell us. But this crested head bothered me because I see it in not only magazines and cartoons, but then you begin to see it in everywhere. This crest on the heads of these aliens, and they're always green, the reptilian. Then here's a giant statue in Persia with the crest on his head. Prehistoric pictures drawn on walls with crested heads. This is a disc that was found in the Middle East, and on this disc, a lot of interesting symbols on this disc, but one of them is a man with a crested headdress. And of course, here in the Aztecs and the Mayas, they have their gods with this crested head. And here's a deity, a serpent having a plume on its head. So the more I got into this whole idea, this plume or crested head on these gods, and there's a serpent with the symbol too. Aztecs and Mayas also had their gods had crested headdresses. Which is implying, in my mind, that there's some connection between that normal thing which we see on reptiles and is applying it to humans. And so here's one of the ancient gods of the Assyrians with that same idea of the crested headdress, crested head. In Africa, some of the gods, modern day. And then, of course, the Greeks and the Romans, their helmets were crested headdresses. So when you think about how this whole idea of this crested head has matured through the ages for thousands of years, and even the Mohawk Indians, the Mohawks had the same style crest headdress. So I begin to suspect that there might be something to this idea of a connection between here's in Hawaii, God's crested head. But what is the connection with these, with this symbol of the powerful gods in all the different nations of the world? And of course, and this is in Hawaii, but then of course you have in Tibet, the Tibetans also have the same idea. So the question has to be asked, is it possible that there has been some kind of an interfacing of humans with extraterrestrials and reptilians? I think so. I think that's what's happened, and I think they're here. Now, I'm totally sure because I've heard, well, as I said, way too many stories that validate the idea that they are here, but they don't necessarily show themselves to everybody. If they're superior to us, which obviously they are, because they've either been here millions of years before we got here, or they've come here from somewhere else and we haven't gone there, so they're superior to us, wherever they have come from. And when you look into Skinwalker Ranch, which I started talking about before, and the stuff that's actually happening right now today at Skinwalker Ranch with these kind of reptile aliens showing up on people's property, they're getting pictures of them, they're having confrontations with these reptile aliens. Scientists have been out there, news people have been out there, so they do exist. So you've got to explain them somehow. Either they're interdimensional beings, or they've come here from somewhere else, or they've always been here. Maybe we're the new guys on the block, and they've always been here. And we've heard all these stories about underground installations and underground military operations with reptile aliens. I've heard all kinds of stories from military people about that. So I would not be a bit surprised if we are being visited by other entities from other places in the universe, and we have been for a long time.